Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Wellington House today, Friday 29th of September. Warm welcome to our councillors who have rejoined the committee and to our newest members, and also to the officers joining us here today. Have we got any apologies of absence?
Four apologies from Councillors Khan, Keith, Hames and Thompson.
Thank you. And just for the benefit of the people watching today, I'd just like to say, if you want to access to our agenda pack, if you go onto the West Yorkshire Combined Authority web page and look for today's date, you'll be able to find all the notes in there, and welcome. Okay, so declarations of pecuniary interests, members, any interests? No, thank you, members. And item 3, possible exclusion of press and public. I just checked there's no exclusions. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting held on 13th of July 2023. Those members present. Would somebody like
correct record?
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock, can I have a seconder, please? Sorry.
I think I was in attendance at that meeting, but I'm not listed as being.
Well spotted.
Oh, right.
Could we just make a note of that, please? Councillor Dodds, thank you for seconding.
Correct record, but with the addition of
Councillor
McCarthy's name.
Yes, thank
Sorry.
you.
I was obviously a bit too quick.
Okay, Chair's report. So I've just got a couple of things I would like to say. Congratulations to Hannah on her new role here at West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and thank you for all of your hard work while you've been here. And during the summer, Councillor Pinnock and I have met with our new directors and interim directors and Chair of Transport Committee and also the Mayor of West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and the CEO, Ben Still, and we'd just like to thank them for their time, keeping us updated on everything transport related. Okay, item 6, scrutiny and government's arrangements. Khaled.
Thank you. Very briefly, this report outlines what the Combined Authority agreed at its annual meeting with regards to scrutiny, governance, establishing this committee and the other two scrutiny committees, corporate and economy. The terms of reference are attached to Appendix 1, the scrutiny standing orders which govern how scrutiny works at the Combined Authorities at Appendix 2. The meeting dates are listed in 2.3, but just with a minor error that the Mayor's question time will be the 1st of December rather than the 26th of January as listed. Membership is listed in 2.8. The Chair and Deputy Chair, the same, reappointed from last year and the previous year. We have 7 new members. And last point about substitution, members can't attend. They are allowed to have a substitute from the same party and council on one of the other 2 scrutiny committees, with the exception of 4 members who don't have a pair and so can appoint their own members, and they're listed in 2.12, paragraph 2.12.
Thank you, Khaled. Has anyone got any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, members. Item number 7. So this is the Transport and Infrastructure Work Programme. So we discussed the work programme at quite some length at our last meeting. I'd just like to thank everybody who contributed to that and for giving us your suggestions. Also afterwards as well, thank you for either emailing me or Khaled and sending on your thoughts and ideas. It's really valuable to have members put their ideas together. Okay, a few other things that are important to note. On page 30, I think we need to adjust the date. I think it was saying 20th of September instead of 29th. And also, at some point in the future...
Page 31.
Oh, page 31, okay, thank you. At some point in the future, we will need to set up. Whoops.
Things fall apart.
On for my next trick. Okay, at some point in the future, we need to set up 2 permanent working groups. So the Combined Authority are obviously working on mass transit and on franchising. And although we're not necessarily needing to do that now, it would be useful to start having a think of which one you would prefer to be on. I'm aware from yesterday's meeting, it is something that's moving fast. It's moving with pace. So, yeah, it would be good to have a conversation about that. The Mass Transit Vision has now also been endorsed by the Transport Committee and will be approved by the Combined Authority on 12th of October. So once it's at business case sort of consultation stage, then we really need to start looking at the details of that. We, as Scrutiny, will look at it in January, the consultation stage, and I'm hoping that members can see the vision in the Transport Committee papers as well and feedback from that. So if you do get a chance, you can watch the Transport Committee meetings online. If you can't watch them at the time, you can watch them online afterwards. And see if bring to the meeting anything that you think that we need to have our eyes on. And as it was one of the mayoral pledges, I'm going to propose that housing is covered in the MQT, the Mayor's Question Time, in December. It was something that there was quite a few of us that really wanted to have a further discussion about that, especially when we've got so many thousands of people that are currently looking for homes. So that's going to come to the meeting in December. There was also a question around the Flexibus trial, big scheme to address gaps in the network. And obviously that was scrapped halfway through to due to the high costs. It was called in originally by 6 members in July, but it was not eligible for a call-in, as the Transport Committee decision was just noting it. So, yeah, it was a decision that had already been made. So I'd really like us to understand, you know, a bit more about that. And so I'd just like to see if there's any other members, how many of us would like to have a conversation. It really applies to sort of rural networks and, you know, places. And there might be somewhere in the country that you know of, you know, that you think, oh, yeah, they're doing it really well there. I'm sure our officers are all looking for those places, but, you know, we are extra eyes at the end of the day, so it'd be really useful if we can have a couple of volunteers. So I'm going to volunteer. Is anybody else? It's called the Flexibus. So basically it was done as a trial over in East Leeds. I won't go into too many of the details, but it was a trial. So thank you, Councillor Merritt. Do you want to? Yeah. So there'll be so there's myself, Councillor Merritt, Councillor Pinnock.
Can I just say 1 or 2 words, because I think there is a question about how it was put together, and of course with hindsight's a wonderful thing. 1 or 2, well, if I can put it like this, what appeared to be flaws in the way it was put together didn't help, and I think we need to understand why, for example, an urban area was chosen rather than a rural one, which, as Councillor Parsons says, is the sort of most obvious area for such things. But I would certainly be interested in trying to get to the bottom of it, because it does appear to me that it could potentially be a very useful tool in helping people get about.
Yeah,
Public
thank you,
transport.
Councillor
Yeah,
Pinnock.
thank you.
Yeah, there's definitely some issues. So, is there anybody else? Well, that's probably this for. It's so it was pulled at Transport Committee in June, halfway through the trial. There's a question about type of buses. Obviously, this is something that our officers are inheriting, you know, but we do need to look at it. I think in terms of answering the bigger picture for transport, we want to know when we go from A to B how long that's going to take. If we can dial somebody up a bit like an Uber bus, you know, I've been saying this for a long time, we need buses that we know what's going on with. And this just really, for me, is part of a bigger solution. So I'd like to unpick what we've learned, and I'd like to be able to put a recommendation forward to find out what can we do that will help this move forward.
I'd like to know why it was pulled as well, what the reasoning behind that decision was.
Okay, yeah, so we can talk about all of those things at the...
Loads of money.
Yeah, it's yeah. I'll pop you down then, Councillor Watson, is that okay?
I mean, on the website, it's still, it doesn't say it's been pulled.
Okay,
The project is still going ahead.
okay, so that needs updating, if you can update that. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody. Yes, so has anyone got any other...
No, actually, no, sorry, it says closure, project status closure and review.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to...
It was small writing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watson. Anyone got any comments on the work programme? Councillor Merritt, thank you.
Yes, just on the housing one. It puts 3 bullets in terms of what we want, what we're going to look at. Can I suggest we also look at the force of decarbonisation, you know, the carbon footprint of new housing, and so on. And clearly, if we're doing affordable housing, having low cost to heat properties is a key thing where there's a combination of those 2 agendas.
Thank you for that. Okay, so is everybody okay with the work programme? Can I have somebody to propose? I'll propose it.
Second it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So our main substantive item for today so firstly, I'd just like to thank our officers for bringing this detailed report to us. There's been a lot of hard work gone into this, and having been at the meeting yesterday, I was quite surprised to see 1,079 pages in the report that they had to read. So I was, yeah, we've got. And I'm aware that you are going to give us a summary on some of that stuff today. But most of us will have had a presentation, as I mentioned before, on the bus reform and the franchising proposals from our Wicker staff at our individual councils, and we've had some really good feedback from those council meetings as well. So now we've got the chance really to look at we've had the chance to look at it on a local level. If we, as I said before, just expand our vision and out and take in the whole of the West Yorkshire authorities, we're going to focus on the bigger picture today. And the report is set out in 3 parts. Obviously, passenger experience, the sort of current picture with short-term improvements, any complex, and a complex outline of all the funding pots. Thank you. KPIs are on page 44, followed by the real-time passenger experience, followed by the longer-term picture and an update of the bus reform and franchising. So I'd just like to ask our officers if there's anything you'd like to add. Simon, well.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I just briefly pick up on the points that set out in the report? So, as you rightly say, there are probably 3 aspects to the report. The first element is around our monitoring, both directly and in partnership with Transport Focus, of passenger experience across the system. The second element is around how we are making use of funds in what is still quite a sort of fluid time in terms of the provision of the bus network, so that we can maintain a service for the travelling public. And then the third element is around the forward-looking work to assess our options for quite fundamental reform of the bus market in West Yorkshire. So if I pick up the first element around our general monitoring. We continue to have lower levels of overall demand across public transport compared to the situation before the pandemic. As you have rightly pointed out, Chair, a large part of that is driven by quite changed patterns of activity around the conurbation, and we're actually seeing quite a shift in terms of when demand most presents itself. People are working a more fluid working week than was previously the case. We're actually seeing more activity at weekends than we previously saw, which is a great positive in many ways. I think so that's a challenge for us in terms of how we best use our funds across the system. The other aspect that continues to concern us is that whilst there are some aspects of movement in terms of satisfaction across the piece, satisfaction with the network is still not where we would like it to be. If we want to be able to achieve the objectives that we've set, both in terms of social inclusion and extending opportunity to all of our communities in West Yorkshire, but also in the context of genuinely sustainable economic activity, then we need to have a bus system which is ever more attractive, both to users and those people who currently don't use the system. So the satisfaction monitoring is really important in the context of them focusing our plans, which takes me on to the second area where our plans at present are very much enshrined in the bus service improvement plan, and we are using the resources that are available to us through BSIP on two fronts really. So we're now starting to see the end of the various forms of emergency funding that we had for bus services through the pandemic. We have got a tail amount of funding, which is called the BSIP Plus funding, that's allowing us to stabilise the position on the network in the near term and mix at the meeting and can address specific issues for members in that regard. And then we have the main programme of improvements that we're looking to deliver through BSIP, and I think I'd probably highlight three in particular that are really coming forward now. The first is clearly the Mayor's Fares arrangement, which has been in place for 12 months now. We have seen, I think, probably two areas of benefit in particular in response to Mayor's Fares. So one is that as we know, those families and households within our community who are often on the lowest incomes are most reliant on our bus system, and there is there's strong evidence to suggest that in a time of rising costs for those households, we are genuinely providing a social benefit in being able to offer reduced fares. And the second element is that on our longer distance routes in particular, we've seen quite a significant uptick in demand because there is such a step change in the reduction of the fare across to Mayor's Fares. Second area is around the use of funds to start to secure the rollout of additional services, and we've recently seen the two new Superbus routes that we set out in the report as a really kind of bold statement from that regard, and a continued commitment that we do see a future for our bus system. And the third area is the deployment of the new team of PCSOs dedicated to the bus system, who will be deployed from next month. The passenger satisfaction data that are referred to before does highlight ongoing concerns within the community around personal safety when travelling by public transport, and so we see the PCOs as a really important statement in terms of our commitment to addressing those concerns. The third area of the report then goes on to highlight the decisions that were taken yesterday. At the time of writing the report, those decisions hadn't been taken. So to recap for members, since 2022, we have been looking at a case for the Mayor to consider her powers to introduce a bus franchising scheme in West Yorkshire. These are powers that are offered through the 2018 Bus Services Act to mayors of mayoral combined authority areas only. That process requires us to undertake a thorough assessment of the market and an assessment of what franchising would offer in addressing the challenges in the market. That assessment was brought in private to the Combined Authority in May and was agreed to be taken to an independent audit as the legislative process requires. We appointed Grant Thornton as independent auditors, and their role as set out in law was to provide advice to the Combined Authority around whether we had used the most appropriate, relevant and up-to-date evidence available to us to prepare the assessment, and that we treated that evidence in an unbiased fashion when considering the options. And I can confirm that yesterday the Combined Authority received a letter from Grant Thornton confirming a clean bill of health in that regard, and on the back of that, members agreed to now bring the assessment forward into public for a thorough consultation with both statutory consultees and the general public. We will publish all of the information when the consultation starts on the 10th of October. Consultation will run until the 7th of January, and it will then be assessed independently by an agency to be appointed now, and will be written up so that the Mayor can take a decision in March based on the evidence in the assessment and the views that are gathered through the consultation, and we've set out a date in the published scheme for that decision of the 21st of March next year. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Would you like to add anything?
I think Simon's covered it all, Councillor, but Chair, really happy to go into the BSIP Plus in a little bit more detail if members would like that. That's the hearing. Obviously, Simon's talked about the forward plan, but the hearing now and what we're doing with BSIP Plus, if that would help give you a really quick summary of that. So my prime role really is in looking at the future integrated transport vision and looking towards a consultation that was agreed yesterday. Is to maintain passenger confidence right now and to maintain as stable a network as we possibly can. As Simon said, the emergency funding ended in June 23. That was the bus recovery grant, and that was replaced by, for some authorities, the BSIP Plus, Bus Service Improvement Plan, which is an extra funding to the original BSIP allocation that West Yorkshire Combined Authority were given. And in that respect, we took the decision to use that money to restore and protect services, to gain stability in the network and to maintain customer confidence as best we can. So the plan, when we found out about that in May, was to do a district-wide engagement plan, a region-wide engagement plan on a district-by-district basis, engaging with political leaders and district leads on the transport network to see where the gaps were through the withdrawal and removal and reduction of services through the pandemic, and see how we could get the best bang for the buck out of that money that we've got in the Basic Plus. That engagement's now been done, and we've got a short list of services that we feel are ready to be deployed. But the feedback that we got from all districts was that the main priority that we should use the Basic Plus for is to protect services and to stop any further losses. So in that respect, we are currently running 56 contracts that would have been stopped between July and now on the back of the Basic Plus money and on the back of the engagement that we had with our partners across the region. That's a really positive story, and we're continuing to engage with partners and to look at the short list of routes, and to look at the future plan for operators in terms of their change dates and what we think might happen as marginal services become non-viable in light of their reduced emergency funding, and how to best use the Basic Plus money to prevent any further losses. So that work is ongoing, but a tangible output at the moment is 56 contracts have been saved and protecting vital services for passengers to keep people in West Yorkshire connected. And we're doing everything we can with that money to maintain that stability and that passenger confidence.
That's really good news, thank you. Open the floor to members. Councillor Watson.
Mick, just on that very last point, sorry, it's a clarification point, if that's all right, Amanda, to ask. So you say that, I mean, I think that's brilliant. That's a really positive story. I didn't know that. So I think it would be brilliant if there could be a bit more of a communication about that, because I think, I think the narrative about buses is that they're being run into the ground. And so that sounds, I think that would be great, and we can share that as councillors as well. When you say that you've protected 56 services, can you just expand, is that a route that you've protected, or an entire, like it's a 662 from, X to, and you've protected the entire thing, or is it just, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Is it just like a route at a certain time of day, or is it the entire bus service?
It's a really good question, Council, and it's one that I said to my team, they won't ask that. And you have, so well done.
We are good here,
Yes,
just to give you the heads up.
So the answer I can give you is, so it's 56 contracts, 30 of those 56 in predominantly in the Leeds area are full services. Those services would have been withdrawn, and they are full services. The other 26 are contract uplifts, so they are an uplift on contracts. So those services would have been stopped, but we've protected them by increasing the value of those contracts in the short term, just to maintain that stability. So the correct answer is 56 contracts, not necessarily 56 services, but the 30 services that we did in June were beginning, middle and end of services. So I can get a breakdown of what that means, but it's a mixture of add-ons. So for example, one might be if a service runs, and this is an example, I'm not thinking of a particular service, from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. we might be supporting the 6 till 8 a.m. and the 9 till 11 p.m. bit of the service, and commercially the middle bit runs perfectly well on its own. So those contracts, so that's what I mean by contracts. But the first 30 were services, they would have gone, yeah. And I can get a detailed, accurate breakdown if you need that, Councillor.
As you'll know by working with us on Transport Scrutiny, we love the detail. So we always ask for data. So if you're able to provide the detail, that's great. Sorry for new councillors, if you'll find that we really love the data.
Yeah, this is true, Councillor Watson. We do. We love a bit of detail. Okay, Councillor Wilson, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Chair. Looking at some of the stats around confidence in best value bus ticket, but also when I was on the Transport Committee last year, we were looked at the passenger charter, I think it's called, and one of the points I raised was that if you look at a bus stop, there's often very little information on that bus stop about like how you complain, how you provide feedback, really very little useful information on the bus stop itself, aside from whether or not it's got a real-time information screen. We were assured then that like posters and things would be going up in bus stops and that information would be improved. I don't think I've seen that yet. So have you got an update on that? How we make sure we've got really good information. So because I think at the moment, if you're a bus user, actually you wouldn't know that, you know, for example, you can complain and get some of your money back or whatever it is. So we need to make sure people really know that, but also that the people have the right information about the best value bus tickets, because we do have some very good value bus tickets now, thanks to the mayor's changes. And just a very small second question, if I can. If in March the mayor approves franchising, did you have a rough sense of what the timeline is following that to getting to getting to it being in practice?
You've asked the $1 million question.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor. Mick, would you like to?
So if I take the first question on the passenger charter, maybe hand over to Simon for the for the second part of your question, Council. So it's a really good question, and it's something that in my previous role at the Combined Authority led on in terms of the development and the implementation of the passenger charter, which I think went through Transport Committee in March this year. A really key element of that, as you say, is about the complaints procedure, the ability for passengers to, with confidence, feedback, complain, or otherwise to operators and to the Combined Authority. And as such, the instruction to the teams was to ensure that there's information about the complaints procedure on every RFD going forward. And that is still being rolled out. Obviously, through the pandemic, we took the 14,000 RFDs down to 5,000 due to the volatility in the market, and that's now being rolled back out again. Some of the issues that we've got is because of the congestion on the roads, we're getting slight timetable tweaks from operators on a very regular basis. So our RFD programme is still extremely volatile as it was. Sorry, RSD. Sorry, an RFD is a report. An RSD, roadside display. So sincere apologies. So the things that you see on. So, sincere, and I curse anybody that does, so I'll curse myself, and I've even used the wrong acronym, for which I sincerely, so it's a double up, and why wouldn't it get you confused?
Sure it's not RAC.
So let's not go there. No. So the roadside display, so the things that you see at the bus stops and the bus shelters, with all the information on that passengers need, and the directive out of that Transport Committee was to roll them out, as you say, Councillor, absolutely right. The challenges that we've had since then, the timetables have been tweaked on a very regular basis because services are sort of resettling down after COVID, and the punctuality and the reliability of some of the services on the basis of congestion has been challenged, and therefore operators are tweaking the timetable slightly. So this has meant a regular update on the timetables, and so we've got a double problem in terms of rolling out the post-COVID 14,000, and then still got the volatility in the changes. In addition to that, we've had some challenges in the depot at Bradford where we actually print the roadside displays, and that's slowed things down a little bit. But you're absolutely right, this is a priority, and for passengers to be able to have that consistent feedback mechanism into operators and to us is a priority, and it is still a priority, but it is taking longer than we expected it to.
Can I say very quickly?
Okay, yes.
Just as a layman, I don't quite understand why that information can't be a separate poster to the kind of timetable information. Do you see what I mean? There's often room for
Passenger charter.
Or not even, it doesn't have to be passenger, just literally information about how do you complain, really basic information like a post-it in the bus shelter. Do you?
Sure, and this is, the people that run these services will probably be able to tell you better than I do, but there's limited space within the cabinets in which you put the roadside displays, and when you put multiple documents in, due to weathering and dampness, they tend to slump and fall and cover each other over. So it's difficult to put more than one document in there. But it's a point that's noted, and I think if I can take that away, go back to the teams, see if we can get something a little bit, because that's an issue that doesn't change like the roadside displays do, and we'll see what we can do. I know there was talk of getting a QR code attached to the roadside displays, and that's something that we could put on there as a permanent feature, given that the link to the passenger charter is unlikely to change, albeit it's an evolving document. It will stay where it is. So I'll take that back. It's a good point, and one that I'll see if I can do something with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Can I just say that in Calderdale we now have, I don't know whether this is because I'm the chair of the Scrutiny, but we now have timetables in our bus stops, and they've got QR codes. So not all of them. Can you please do Councillor Foster's Road as well, please? But yeah, no, because I was really surprised. It's something that we've been talking about for a long time, and as you say, it was brought up last year, wasn't it, with the Transport Committee, and the way of complaining is really important. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Pinnock is next.
There's another question. Or another answer.
Oh, sorry, another answer.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes.
Simon, would you like to?
Oh, not at all. Bus franchising rollout. So, for the consultation, we now publish a draft franchising proposal to consult on. So, all of this information is now going to be laid out for consultation. Within the draft scheme that we'll consult on, there are 3 rounds of franchising, and the 3 rounds are based on groups of parts of the conurbation, so that we work our way around the conurbation. We can make most efficient use of internal resources in doing so, and we make sure that we focus our efforts in a series of locations, and therefore get everything right on the day of transition in those places. On that model, the first round of contracts would be let at the end of Q2 in 2026 and would operate from early 27. We'd then have a second round which will be let from the end of Q1 2027 and would operate from the end of 27 turn of the year. And the third round of contracts will be let towards the very end of 2027 and would be operational by the late summer of 2028. It is not a process that happens overnight, and that's because these are significant public contracts that are then involved, and as we set out in the franchising case, there are stages of market engagement that we'd want to go through first. There are also processes such as the management of depots that we would want to work through in advance. We'll set all of this out very, very clearly in the consultation documents, and we will be briefing all elected members. Further members will be aware that there have been private briefings in recent weeks, so that you're aware of the decisions that the combined authority will be taking. There will be further briefings for elected members. We're also working very, very closely at the moment with local media as well from this point onwards, because we recognise that this is actually a very complex consultation that we're about to run, and we want to make sure that the media is well briefed so that they can help the public in understanding the nature of the consultation.
Thank you. Yeah, it just looks like a very lengthy legal process, and it's important that we do take everyone with us, isn't it? So I really appreciate you reaching out to local authorities and bringing us with you. I think that's a critical part of the process. So yeah, thank you. Councillor Pinnock, you're next.
Thank you. Mick Bunting's already touched on this. This is to do with early morning buses, because I've had an issue with that. But what I don't know how easy it is for the authority to deal with things like this, but the issue I had concerned a bus service that starts in Kirklees but goes for only a mile or two. Most of it's in Bradford. And so technically, not technically, it is a Bradford service, but it affects my area as well. And I just wonder whether things like that are fully taken care of, because they ones that cross boundaries in that way can sometimes fall through the net, because it appears they are a service that's in council area X, but in fact they have a bit that serves council area Y, and I just want to make sure that these areas are not forgotten. The other point I was going to make has been partly covered concerning with franchising. What I too thank the authority for the consultation work you've done with our council groups. It certainly the members of our group, when we had it, were mightily impressed with the work that you've been doing on this, and look forward to it happening. Now that Simon has set out the actual timetable, the speed of decision seemed to be quite quick, but in that it was going out. The consultation would be finished by March next year, but of course that's only the beginning of it. And there was me thinking it's going to happen later that year. I'd forgotten, because they did actually tell us in the consultation. And I just as a parting shot, are we going to talk about mass transit in all of this? Because we've
got that on our work programme.
We have indeed. Yeah.
I think another meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to answer that?
Shall I? I'll start on the cross boundary stuff. So I can reassure you that when we look at services, we have a defined values framework or guidance document criteria that's approved by our elected members in Transport Committee, and we look at services on a functional basis. What's the function of that service and what's it doing? We look at patronage across the full route, end-to-end route. So you're absolutely right. When I've talked about district by district engagement, that makes it sound like these are neat little packages of services in one area, and we're completely aware that and sometimes engaging with elected members on a service is virtually impossible to do, because you're covering the whole of West Yorkshire in some of these services, or large parts of West Yorkshire. But we look at the function of the route, so connecting people to employment opportunities, health services, vital service, all that kind of thing. We look at the patronage, and we look at the sort of the number of passengers on any particular part of the journey, and then the price per passenger if it's attended services. So there's a list of criteria that we look at, and whether it's a cross-boundary service or otherwise, and a lot of them obviously are in West Yorkshire with the 5 districts, wouldn't necessarily that wouldn't impact on our view as to whether that service should be funded, continued, or otherwise. And that will be our approach going forward as we review the tendered network in a more structured way going forward into 2024, once we get through the BSIT Plus work that I talked about earlier. Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Dodds.
So I just wanted to talk a bit about experience of some of the bus networks around Bradford, and because I am an avid bus user, and the main bus that goes between Bradford and Calderdale has been run down for many years, and what used to be a 10-minute service now is nobody's guess of when that bus is going to come. And even though it might say on the timetable, you've no idea, and there's just 3 coming at once, and then not one for 45 minutes. And there's even been a petition raised by people along the way because it's so bad. So because of that, it's difficult to encourage people to come and use the bus. So that's one thing, but also the buses that go out into the community and join up different ones are really being cut. And I raised an issue with one that used to go up Moore Avenue, because no longer does it run on an evening or on a Sunday. So some women, you know, contacted me and said, you know, they have to get a taxi if they want to go out an evening and do things. And so they've just been sort of chipped away. And there's other bus routes that have been taken on by contractors where they don't sort of fit with the schools, you know, and the hospitals. There's one that goes from mine that goes to the hospital and around several schools. But it only runs once an hour and it's really bizarre times and it just doesn't fit with anything. And so it's like that they don't speak to the community or listen to the communities when they're designing and where they're cutting. And I noticed it said in 2.32 about there's going to be a consultation with Combined Authority and list of services about, you know, I think ones that you're going to use and what part of the community I think is going to be taken into account with that.
It's a really good question, thank you. Yeah. Who would like to answer that? Is that one for you, Mick?
So thank you for that, and I think you raise a really valid point, and the frustrations that you're highlighting, Council, I think have been experienced by many passengers through, particularly coming out of COVID, and the difficulties that we've had in maintaining that stability. That is something that I'm, as I said earlier about the BC Plus, something I'm really committed to helping to develop. We can't perform miracles with the resources that we've got at the moment, but absolutely take on board that comment about what you've said about operators. We work really closely with them. We've got a good working relationship with them through our Bus Alliance at the moment, and we have regular meetings, and I can take this back to them in terms of the comments that you made. And if you want an offline conversation about giving me some more of the detail about that specific service, I can also talk to my network planning team who can look specifically into that to see what the problem, if there are any problems, well, there are the problems and why those problems may be occurring. There are often reasonable explanations for them that we can't solve straight away, but sometimes by knowing about specific issues we can do something pretty quick and get some quick wins. So I'd invite you to maybe contact me afterwards so I can link into the Bus Alliance and to my network team to do something about that. With regards to the stuff that you talked about, schools and hospitals, we've got, obviously, with the commercial services do run to schools. We've also got our own dedicated bus services that we commission from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and I've taken a look at that. In fact, Simon and I had a conversation about this morning, and we feel that it is ready for a review. We get good feedback from schools, and the services that we commission work as well as they can with the money that we've got. But absolutely agree with you that a review is needed in that area, and we are doing that. In fact, we've had the conversation this morning. That work is being commissioned today to look at that. And what I can do is expand that across the wider network in terms of the commercial services to schools and hospitals. We've had an issue with the 113 for connecting Dewsbury and Pinderfield Hospital, and we even though that's an NHS contract, third-party contract, we've stepped in and done some really meaningful work on that as well. So it's about knowing about these issues and doing what we can, but again, not wanting to undermine the level of frustration that passengers are feeling. We do understand it, and it's why we've got this longer-term integrated transport vision to help with this. But again, I want to be really clear, my job is to look after the here and now as best I can with what I've got, and I will continue to do that. But welcome your approach after the meeting, and thank you for raising it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up reliability and punctuality in particular. Reliability is, you know, sort of a little bit below target, but not a million miles off. So it's definitely better than it was. But punctuality, particularly for stops along the way, is less than 80%. That's really disappointing, and it's sort of less than it was in April. The figures we've got April, May, and June, and it's April was the better of the three, and June's in the middle, and it just doesn't seem to be moving much at all. And the one thing, I mean, bus patronage is really, really important. And the one thing that gets people on buses is knowing that they're going to turn up when they say they're supposed to. you know, so if we've got that reliability of service, we'll get increased patronage. The one thing that says to people, oh, forget it, I'm going to take the car, is because they can't guarantee that they're going to get to where they need to go when they need to get there, because they don't know if the bus is actually going to show up or not. So it's a huge frustration that reliability is still so poor. And I appreciate there's issues with roadworks and goodness only knows what they're doing outside of here. I've got no clue whatsoever. But you know, there are of course issues with traffic jams and accidents and roadworks and all the rest of it, and some of those will impact, but not to the level where we've got sort of less than 80% reliability for stops along the way. I've got a couple of other quick points if I can. Accessibility to information for people without access to smartphones. Can we please keep that in mind? It's all very well putting QR codes on, but you know, my mum wouldn't have the faintest clue how to access information using a QR code. She can send text messages on her phone, that's it, and use it for phone calls obviously. But you know, there's a large amount of people who don't have access to that, so it really is important that they can still find that information. You know, information about how to complain or how to raise comments and whatever it is that they need. They still need that without just accessing smartphone tech. Connectivity between routes and joining things up, so that you've got, if you're wanting to get a bus from, say, North Halifax to Elland, you don't want to have to wait for half an hour for buses in between times. And that and you'd also want to have the buses that go from relatively nearby places. You don't want to have sort of not only a half an hour wait, but also to have to walk a quarter of a mile between bus stops to be able to access stuff. It doesn't improve people's desire to get out of their car and use the bus if it takes them 3 times as long to get somewhere using the bus as it does using a car, or more than that. And the final little point, we were given some really excellent information on the slides at the bus presentation on Monday, but I was too far back in the room and I couldn't read most of it. Now it's been through Wicker Transport yesterday, can we please have access to the slides so I can actually look at the information and see it? Thank you.
Some really good points there. Just to reassure you, on our Calderdale timetables, we've got the QR code and a list of the times. So thankfully, we've been listened to, because it is something that we've talked about before. Do you like to start, Simon?
I pick those up. So issues around punctuality, absolutely. Clearly one of the strengths that we have around the system here in West Yorkshire, and I can say this with confidence, having previously worked in Greater Manchester, is we do have an increasingly extensive real-time passenger information system as well, which does help enormously in terms of helping people to cope with some of the punctuality issues. Of course, what it also does is to serve to demonstrate all the more to people when services are running late. It is a combination of operators staying on top of their services, and also some of the congestion issues that we face at pinch points. And you're right to point out that in common with a number of places, that there is a significant amount of activity taking place on our roads at the moment. It's in part the sign of a healthy local economy, because it's often utilities supporting additional housing. It's often cabling to support next generation internet access into housing, and so forth. And if I can defend my colleagues in the City Council, what's going on out here is actually going to provide better movement for buses through the city centre. So I think it's it's a very good thing. Printed information, absolutely. We're not going to turn our back on printed information. Connectivity between routes is absolutely one of those elements that caused us to look at whether reform is needed in the bus market. So in the reality at the moment is that it can often be two different providers of services. We cannot compel two private companies to organise their timetables around each other. We can't even compel those two private companies to operate from the same bus stands. Clearly, under a different model, that would be very different.
Quite often, it's the same company. North Halifax Island is two different bus routes operated by the same company. But
Thank you for that. It's really useful to know. Just to add something so we looked at real-time information last year quite extensively, and I can see that it's still under investigation. Give us an idea when that might come to us. Thank you.
So this is actually an area that sits under Dave, but I was involved in this quite heavily in my previous role. My understanding is that there's just been some funding made available to have a proper deep dive look at the RTI issues. What we've also got, I can tell you, is that our operator, I set this up just in the new year, and we've set up a focus group of operators with us to get some quick wins in the process. There's obviously the technology that sits behind it, but there's also
Which is ours.
Which is our technology, yeah, which is ours. But it's only, this is a technical piece of work, but it's only as good as the data that goes in it. And I think some of the issues are around the speed at which we get cancellations data from operators. And so what I did was set up a focus group in the new year. That focus group now is moving on to its third stage, and we've got one set up in the next couple of weeks to get processes for our operators to get that information to us much quicker than they are doing. Because once we've got that, it will then actually show up on no longer as a ghost bus, but as a cancelled service. And going back to your point, Councillor Foster, once people know what the reality of that service is, even though it might not be coming at the time they want it to, just knowing that it's coming in 10 minutes instead of 3 minutes, and that's reliable is what we're going for. And that's what these workshops are about. But the wider investment is about looking at the technology that sits behind it, and how we can actually get it working better than it is. So
Yes,
it is a real keen focus.
Let's use some sensors, rather than people sitting, putting this data in. We watch pizzas arrive at our house. We should be able to see a bus stop arrive.
Sure, there are improvements to be made. I think just and completely hear that, and absolutely we are committed to making it better. It is something. It is a good service, and we get a lot of really positive feedback from passengers. But when it goes wrong on RTI, real-time information, it does lead to extreme frustration, and understandably so. But in the main, I think it's working quite well. But we have had some challenges with First and other operators in the way that they operate their procedures to get that information to us. But there's been a recent depot closure. It's led to their internal challenges. But they, to be fair, they've come to us to proactively resolve this, and this is what this focus group is all about. So we're committed to doing something about it.
And it's great that those relationships are being built stronger as well. I think that's actually a critical part of the process as well. But it's good to hear that the behind the scenes is going to be looked at as well. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a few things. So the timetabling, I believe that, well, when I last asked about it, there was a limit as to how many times a year bus operators can change the timetable. I believe it's 6, right? Is that still the case? Right, okay, cool. Mobility credits, I can see on this list of funding, mobility credits, there's an enhancement to the existing M-Card app to enable organisations to issue free tickets direct to people's phones. Is this planned to replace the paper scratch cards, or are they still available for people without phones? Good, thank you. Internal capacity improvements. What's the breakdown of how these things are being budgeted for? So there's communications, fares and ticketing, bus network delivery, development and procurement, and bus priority and safety. And is there anything within communications that will sort of tie into what we were saying earlier about complaints and accessibility of being able to complain? Because I think just a simple phone number that people can ring up, and even if it's automated, like, I'm complaining about this, like, and you can maybe say which service you're at and the time and things, like, that'd be a really useful tool to capture data from people who don't have smartphones.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
So again, absolute reassurances that paper-based solutions remain what we're looking to trial is the use of digital technology to see if that then starts to become something which is useful in new quarters. We're keen to develop that sort of next generation travel marketing toolkit as part of the overall offer. But you're absolutely right, a phone line is still incredibly important. We do still maintain a metro line. We need to make sure that number is readily available. It should be on the bottom of all of our timetables, but and I have to say, credit to our staff. I think our Metroline staff are really good, really well trained in being able to handle people's comments in a really sensitive and helpful way. So yeah, that will continue to be an important part of our overall offer for passengers.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I come back?
Yeah, do.
Yeah, so what's the breakdown then of the 2.2 million between communications, fares and ticketing, bus network delivery and bus priority and safety?
So the overall BSIP package is still being finalised, and that's a holding number at the moment. But I'm happy to come back next time with where we are in terms of BSIP and what that breakdown looks like.
Oh, that's stolen my question. No, I was going to say, from what I've noticed, there's around 10 pots of funding in these papers, and due to the complexity of that funding package, can you please reassure us that we are budgeting correctly for each pot? Yes, I can reassure you. It is a significant challenge, and something which has been raised regularly by the mayor and by the leaders of the councils, that the more that we can move to single pot arrangements with central government, the more we can genuinely exercise devolution. In the city region, there is significant administrative cost to us at present in accounting to a series of different government funding regimes, but I can absolutely assure you that our finance director here and their team are well placed to keep us well organised across those complex budgets. That's very reassuring. Yeah, it just means you've got to double do the work double, doesn't it, basically? And just another question on the back of that. So we've had 33 million allocated for the mayor's fares, obviously to support the discounted tickets over the next 3 years. And I understand from discussions that we're burning through that fast. Can you just give us an idea how much we've spent in the first year and what we've got left, if you've got any idea roughly? Thank you. So I don't yet have a final reconciliation for the first year, but we will be bringing that forward to the combined authority.
we are, as is the case across the piece, facing the usual challenges in terms of cost inflation. That cost inflation is causing bus operators to want to quite fundamentally renegotiate going forwards, which was always the provision within the arrangement, that there would be a 1 year arrangement that would then be renegotiated. And it's another very good demonstration of the importance of us being able to move to flexible single pots so that we can continue to identify what matters most for West Yorkshire and be able to manage our money to achieve those ends. But yeah, we will be bringing an outturn to the Combined Authority, and clearly I'm sure then the committee will be interested to look at that as well.
Yeah, I think it would be really useful for us to have eyes on figures as well. Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. So I've just got a couple of things. One's actually a request that somebody made just this morning, but I'll come to that in a moment. I mean, obviously, you know, we know that if we're going to hit our net zero target in the West Yorkshire strategy, that we've got to have a beautifully integrated public transport system and active travel system. Okay, so I suppose one thing that I'm not seeing here, and forgive me, it could be covered elsewhere, but it would just be good to know. You know, in Bradford, we're very lucky at the interchange. You have bus information and you have train information in one place. If you're getting off the bus, you can see what train to catch, etc. That is not across West Yorkshire, is it? So, I mean, I don't normally look at Leeds and need to know where the buses are, but I don't know if there's real-time bus information at Leeds Station. I live in Shipley. The buses arrive in the town. There's no information about what the next train is and vice versa. And actually, buses in Shipley don't even go to the train station. So, you know, we don't have an integrated system. So I'm just wondering, within the bus kind of, you know, what we're looking at with improving our bus service, where are we doing the join up with, you know, West Yorkshire Metro and the transport system, the train system, to make sure that it's as easy as possible for people to, you know, use both. And I'm not seeing that here, so I just want to understand a little bit more about what might be going on, including things like, you know, integrated tickets, etc. And the other thing is, as we look forward into the franchising for the buses, I think we've obviously got to think about how, you know, what are the expectations of people going to be in the future? And we are going to see a massive uptake, hopefully, in things like electric bikes, or, you know, more people using, you know, kind of fold-up bikes, etc. So, you know, when I go, and I'm very lucky because I sometimes my other work, have to go and travel around and visit on public transport other colleagues that live in the European Union, you can take your bike on the bus. So, you know, I imagine our dream is that, you know, and we know that we're going to have to get there, that it's going to have to be seamless for people to be able to go from active travel to using public transport. And I just want to know where that thinking is also in thinking about how that's going to change and the expectations of people are going to change as we look at bringing in things like, you know, the fact that we're going to be franchising. There's going to be maybe different sort of bus design needed as well. Sorry, they're two big questions.
Would you like to answer that?
They are. So a couple of times through the discussion we referred before to mass transit as well. Quite rightly, there's the question in terms of how does all of this fit into an integrated offer. I'm very conscious of the fact that in the context of the work programme of the committee, the paperwork that we brought forward today is very specifically focused around the bus network. We set out in the connectivity plan a very, very clear statement that the agenda in West Yorkshire is around an integrated transport system, and that sits at the heart of the work that we've been doing to look at market reform within the bus network. sits at the heart of the way that we're thinking around the mass transit system. I know we're going to talk about that at a future meeting. And as we go into next year, I'm starting to organise the team to think about the preparation of a new local transport plan for West Yorkshire, which will set out that integrated transport agenda very clearly. So I can absolutely reassure everybody that that's at the heart of our agenda, and it's about thinking through a whole range of issues. So yes, within our bus stations, there is real time information in all of those bus stations, but of course our bus stations aren't necessarily always next door to our rail stations for all sorts of perfectly logical reasons. And so at times the focus then is on making sure that we've got good wayfinding between rail stations and bus stations, and really good public realms, so people feel comfortable walking between rail stations and bus stations. And we talked before about the work taking place outside here, and actually the cycle links and the walk links between the rail station and the bus station will be significantly improved as part of the work, all of which is really positive. So it's very much about how we organise our town and city centres to work as hubs, because most of our towns and city centres have got really quite historic form in West Yorkshire. So we've got to achieve those integration outcomes without assuming that we can just turn up as the Transport Authority and take pieces of land that you might otherwise want to do. So that's very important. In terms of cycling, so in terms of the e-bike agenda more widely, just this last weekend we saw the launch of the e-bike scheme here in the city centre, which I think is a really positive statement in terms of moving that agenda forward. Very conscious of the fact that if we were to find ourselves in a bus franchising position, and clearly that is not a decision that has been taken as yet, there is significant work that we would need to do to look at the hierarchy of needs on a future bus fleet. So very conscious of the fact that there are a range of sensitive users on buses who we wouldn't want to disadvantage in any way: wheelchair users, pushchair users, and so forth. But clearly, if we are able to handle a model of bus design, if that becomes a direct issue for us, that means that we can also accommodate bikes, then clearly all the better. Where we can go in terms of cycle hire schemes in the future that help with first and last mile movements at different ends, I think it would need to be a blend of solutions to get this right.
Thank you. And then just an offer. So I was just chatting to the head of sustainability net zero for NHS England in Yorkshire and Humber, and she says obviously the hospital staff are key audience for information on buses. 28,000 people working at LGI. She says she would love it if she could talk to you and get that information into the hospitals across West Yorkshire, so those staff know exactly. So there's an intranet system. You would just look up on the internet, you can see when your next bus was. She says she thinks it could be a real game changer for bus use and passengers. So I hope you would accept that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Yeah, it joins up with something I wanted to talk about actually. So as some of these large businesses, large organisations move towards hybrid working as well, so if we add that to it, I noticed on page 42 that we're working with businesses to plan the network post-COVID down to a 3-day week. And you were talking about this hierarchy. Are we working with businesses to encourage that modal shift? So providing models of hierarchy of transport. So, you know, if somebody is, say, a consultant, they've got to travel around the UK, is that organisation prioritising? I know some are, but how can we encourage more organisations to provide that hierarchy of transport and encourage that? Is that something you're doing currently?
Yeah, we set out in the BSIP plan that we want to re-establish a travel plan network approach, and that's one of our priorities. Working absolutely with large organisations such as the hospitals and the NHS as a headquarter employer as well, and we recognise that employers are a critical conduit. The way in which, as employers, we make demands of our employees shapes travel behaviour quite significantly. But it's not just employers. The way in which we work with retail destinations, the way in which we work with our event destinations, all of these things are important. It's really important not to lose sight of the fact that at most 20% of the journeys that we make are journeys to and from work. It's a far more complex pattern of travel that we're going to need to be able to work across as we look to encourage people to consider their travel choices.
Thank you. And the next question is, in your KPIs on page 44, you've mentioned the modal shift. So in March 19, car use 61%, and you predict it'll be up. Modal shift will be up by 5% by 2025 and 10% by 2030. Can you just give us an idea how you're going to do that behaviour change? Thank you.
So it's not a prediction, it's a target. We've been we're very clear as a city region, aren't we, that we want to be able to step forward and address the serious climate change agenda that's around us. In order to do that, we've got to set some challenging targets for ourselves so that we can continue to test whether the policy toolkit that we have is fit for purpose. It's a very good reason why we're very serious in terms of considering the right future for the bus market here. We've seen very long-term decline in bus travel. That long-term decline, if continued, will take us in the wrong direction in terms of being able to achieve those outcomes. It's why we're very serious in terms of the priority investment in mass transit, so that we can make sure that the shape of West Yorkshire is well supported by the right transport schemes. It's why infrastructure like the infrastructure outside here is so important to encourage changed travel behaviours. That there isn't one silver bullet here. It's about us continuing to make sure that they are the targets that are the right targets for us to follow, and challenging every decision that we take against those targets.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I also have a question around the KPIs, and in particular what the numbers are. In the first one, you've got increased bus patronage. The figure of 10,801,487, is that passenger journeys? Because it would be helpful if it said that. And similarly, improved service provision, is that numbers of services? That figure of 226,749 is the baseline from March 2019. So once we've established that, for the first one, bus patronage, it obviously dropped massively because of COVID, to just shy of 4.5 million. So given we are now 2023, it would be useful to have the March 23 figures in there as well to see where things are. But 2019 levels plus 15% by 2025, given that the latest figure we have on there is 4.5 million and the 2019 figure is 10 and nearly closing on 11 million, that's one hell of a leap. How on earth are we going to get there?
Thank you.
So I'm absolutely right. In terms of bus patronage, yes, it is. It's bus journeys made, and you're absolutely right that there's a bit of labelling in this table that would help enormously. So that's a very good prod for us. The targets are challenging, and they're challenging for all of our. All of the transport authorities outside of London, and it's the reason why collectively, as local transport authorities outside of London, the case that we've been consistently making through this journey of devolution that we're on is that we need a transport system like the transport system that's in place in London, where people can intuitively take decisions to travel by public transport. There is a very simple reality that is not the transport system that we have at present. Frequencies on our bus network are not strong enough. The range of choices that people have is insufficient, and too often people are making a perfectly logical choice at the moment to get into the car that sits on the drive because the alternative is not strong enough. People don't take those decisions to the same extent in London at all. In fact, people increasingly choose car-free lifestyles in London, but they do so because the offer is there for them.
It's an option.
That's the fundamental reason why we make the case that we do. We could shy away from challenging targets, but to do that would be to ignore the reality of the situation.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Page 50. Page 50. Yeah, page 50. Park and ride. I know it's under a separate regime, but it's there with a graph, so let's talk about it. I represent an outer-south region of Leeds, which serves 2, if not 3, of the park and rides around Leeds, especially the Ellen Road one and the Sturton one. So, I thought it was before this date, but anyway, I do have questions, but I'm just highlighting and speaking out loud and hopefully forming a question from that. April 23, journey at the Ellen Road Park and Ride, journeys after 6:30 will be withdrawn. Saturday and Sunday services will be withdrawn. PR3, Sturton, journeys after 7:30 will be withdrawn. Off-peak and Saturday frequency will be reduced and no service on Sunday. Looking at the graph, you can see that there is a dip after this date, after 2023, and I appreciate that it's not up to pre-pandemic levels. In July, and it does say in July 23, the number of park and ride journeys was 72% equivalent number in July. Now, if members look at that in context, then, you know, of course it's going to be lower. But I'd like to know, you know, precisely what it is, because I think the July 23, especially when the service reduced in April, then, you know, it would be lower anyway. And also, related to that, it says on the website, as I've just seen it now, that the last frequent service at Ellen Road is 7 o'clock, with 2 trips beyond 7 o'clock, which finish at half 7. But the Sturton one says that the frequency stops at 5:30, with 6 trips beyond, and here and there until 8:10. Now, there are those gantries on the around Leeds that say, if you finish work later, use the Sturton Park and Ride. Precisely, yes, correct, but the frequency stops later at Ellen Road, which is not really explained on the gantries. So, do you understand where I'm going with that? So, and also related to the
question.
yes,
We don't get questions like
yeah.
like this, so it's
sorry.
good that it's come up.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
sorry. Later on as well, in that, and related to that, one of my constituents said to me when the April changed, as an NHS worker at LGI, my colleagues and I often use the Park and Ride to commute to and from work, and these changes are going to dramatically affect our changes. If they start at 3 o'clock, they can't get home again when they finish at 8 and 9. And also, when the Mayor's Fairs came in, it was a £3 return, and now it's had to go to a £4 return. So why on the M-Card app is there still Park and Ride tickets here? You click on it, same price as them all. So you might as well remove that off the app. Anyway, so there isn't really a question, but there is a point.
No, it's important information that
really
our officers
important.
need to have an eye on, though. Thank you.
Right.
So completely support your point, Councillor, that we're working very hard to encourage first to step the service up again on the Park and Ride. It's a great service, really important part of the offer for the city, and it's really regrettable that that the frequency and the length of operation was changed. So any feedback that you've got from customers that you want, or residents that you want to feed through to us, please do, because the more that we can present the case back to first, the better. I think your observation's a very fair observation in terms of the app. Let's take that one away and resolve. In terms of the app, let's take that away and resolve it, because the tidier that the information is on the app, the better, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention as well that, this change in April, coming up to Christmas, late night Christmas shoppers, there is an incentive of £1.50 return after 3 o'clock. If you go out shopping, have some food, come back at 8 o'clock, there's no bus. So that's really important coming up to Christmas as well.
It's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Councillor Pinnock.
Before we get to the franchising thing happening, how can we support the bus operators that we've got? Because some of them have faced existential threats to their viability. How do we make sure that they can be supported? I presume this would be without any government money, but we have to have people who actually run the bus services, and there's not a limitless supply of them. So it's a very simple question, but a slightly complicated answer.
Is that part of our 56 contracts?
I was going to say it very much is.
It's about commercial services, really.
So it very much is. So the work that Mick referred to before, these are in the main de minimis public spending decisions into what are otherwise commercial services, in order to keep the show on the road, and we've done that in really quite a discreet and appropriate way, because actually our principal focus here is maintaining a network for the travelling public. I think the work that we're doing around PCSO's agenda and just general support that we get from West Yorkshire Police in terms of a presence in bus stations and so forth, all helps in that regard. We're continuing to invest in facilities. I'm delighted to say that the first half of Halifax bus station will be open for operation again on Sunday. These are all important elements in terms of trying to present the offer as well as we possibly can do. But they are very challenging times for operating services, then you're right to raise that, Councillor.
Over to you, Mick.
Just one other point on that, and agree with everything Simon said. Obviously, a large part of the income for our operators is from concessionary fares, and of course we've seen a major reduction in concessionary fare users returning back to buses since the pandemic. But there are some big campaigns going on at the moment, the DFT and local campaigns to try and encourage concessionary fare users to get back out, not only to get back on transport, but for their own mental well-being, social inclusion, all those good things, and getting back out there. So that's another key element of this, but that is being looked at, and campaigns are there to try and get people back on the buses, and that will help give some further financial stability to our operators.
Thank you. Councillor Merritt.
Yeah, obviously I sit outside the main authority area in York, but we had the first MD to the bus forum in York in July, and York's park and rides figures are now above pre-pandemic usage levels, and the main network in the city which first operates is now 95% of pre-pandemic. Now, obviously, York's a different place from accommodations in West Yorkshire, but we've seen the same reduction in work-related use. We've seen the similar reductions in the concessionary use. But what has made the difference is actually the leisure side. So we have substantially increased usage on Saturdays and Sundays that has offset the weekday reductions. We've got better use from students and young people. We've got better use from families, and that is and that's very much linked to the initiatives by the York Bid and the retailers to encourage people to come back shopping in the city centre, to the events promotion, which obviously York is very different in that respect in terms of our range of visitor facilities. But I do wonder if there are some lessons that might be pertinent to West Yorkshire in terms of trying to get the leisure side up and maximised, in the sense that that brings in money that will help to offset the short-term difficulties in the other markets. And I'd to pick up a comment that Councillor Watson made. As a user of Leeds bus services when I come from York, since the Metro office at the station shut, it's a disaster. And trying to work out where the appropriate bus stops are relative to the station. You know, are you heading north or are you heading down Neville Street or whatever? You know, you do not cater for people visiting the city who need to use the bus services, and understanding the network is very difficult for people visiting the city. And I can make the same comment about some of the other main settlements in West Yorkshire. I don't have a car, I always use public transport, and it is very difficult in terms of understanding the networks, which buses you have to catch from the stations to get to where you want to. So I just flag that as something that I do think ought to be addressed if you're going to get more wider use of your buses and not just local. I wanted to pick something up. Your KPIs, I was very surprised there were no figures subsequent to the 2019 and 2021. Is there some reason why we haven't got the March 2023 figures, and will we be getting the annual figures in future?
Thank you for your question. Simon, is that one for you?
It is. If I let me take that question, that last question away, because again, I think it's a very good question, and I want to give you a better answer than I can do right at this moment in time. York, yes, it'd be really. It's a really helpful prompt actually for us to talk to City Council officers, particularly around the park and ride service. I'd be really interested to talk through with them. And thank you for your observations in terms of the visitor experience. I think it's a really important aspect for us to think through.
Yeah, thank you. It is really useful to have an insight from York.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. It's just a quick one, and again relating to the KPIs. Safe and inclusive bus network. Why are our targets not 100%? Improved satisfaction with personal safety at the bus stop for female passengers making complex journey. We only have a target for 2030 of 90%. Why is it not 100%? And the same with the others. We should be wanting everybody to be feeling safe and secure all the time. Those targets need to be 100%, and they need to be 100% in 2025, quite frankly, not in 2030. We shouldn't be sort of worrying that we're not safe on the buses, because feeling safe is another reason why bus patronage will increase, hence helping to address the other KPIs. That is just, I mean, satisfaction with value for money, there's always going to be a wavering on that one, but yeah, information and safety, those targets should be 100%.
It's a really good point, and hopefully the new PCSOs, we can hopefully reassure people. Would you like to come back on that?
Really briefly, I think it's a really sound point, Councillor. Thank you for it. Just to add on to the funding that we've got for the PCSOs, we've got the Safer Travel Partnership in which we work alongside the police, and I think the recent example of what we did with OSIT, with the antisocial behaviour at OSIT bus station, that rapid deployment of staff to tackle that, is showing the deep level of partnership that we've got with the police to tackle these behaviours. And I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Foster, in terms of our ambition should be to reach everybody and to have everybody feel safe, and that the Safer Travel Partnership and the responsive nature in which we can deal with on an intelligence-led basis incidents of antisocial behaviour and crime, and increasing those perceptions of safety is absolutely priority for us. But take that on board. I think it's a valid comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a naive, sort of novice question. Are these figures based on logic, or is there a bus modelling programme that you use to identify these possible outcomes? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I've left my microphone. So certainly the patronage figures are taken more from a working back from where we need to be in terms of modal shift from a decarbonisation perspective. Some of the other targets are probably more of a pragmatic management response at the moment, the 90% targets, but I think the observation is a very, very fair observation. Why wouldn't you judge yourself against 100%? We do use modelling to assess the likely impact of different initiatives. It's one of the areas that we know that we want to continue to strengthen on as an organisation. Historically, transport modelling has tended to be much stronger around capital schemes than around service interventions, but certainly within the management plan for the franchising proposition, if that were pursued, we recognise that we would want to strengthen our revenue modelling activities.
Sorry, I'm trying to get some internet.
Oh.
We like dancing at this committee. It's what we all do in the middle when we finish. Thank you.
I thought it was a sort of rain dance.
It's called the internet dance. Okay, so I've just got Councillor Watson. We need to start thinking about wrapping up. Has anyone got to go for transport at 12? Because we've only got 4 minutes. No, okay. Councillor Watson.
sorry, page 46, where it says tackling the climate emergency implications. Now, I know that this is a piece of work that needs to be done. It's about modelling, isn't it? And it kind of builds on Amanda's point about modelling. We've got to know, as Transport Scrutiny, that what is planned here is actually going to lead to an idea of how much is this going to deliver in our decarbonisation pathway. We know that, is it 38% we need to see, or kind of reduction of in transport? If you're looking at all the different sectors, it might be more than that. I can't remember because I can't get on the internet to check. We know that transport's got a massive part to play in our net zero delivery, and we're not on track at the moment within West Yorkshire on that. We looked at the McDonald report last time and we had a bit of a conversation. We know we need more understanding about how the models work. So I would hope in future, when we're getting reports coming to us, that they are actually giving us some figures there on what is our expectation of how much is this going to deliver on for our decarbonisation. Not just that, supporting Transport Network will do it. We actually need to have some data there. And I know that's pieces of work that will be ongoing, but we need to be absolutely reassured that by mistake, we're not actually going in the wrong direction, which I think we might have found out about some of the 1 billion spend that's already gone on, if that's okay. So I'd like in future that we have more detail under that point. Is that possible?
Of course it's possible, Councillor.
We like details.
So, to a degree, it's possible at the moment, Councillor. So it's absolutely what I would like to be able to bring forward to, in the government's carbon plan, it was made very clear that government was going to produce a local authority toolkit. We're still waiting for it, and that's a fundamental shortcoming that we've got at the moment. Is that at the moment we are still awaiting both guidance from government in terms of how to handle carbon values in preparing a local transport plan and the wider local authority carbon measurement toolkit, both of which were promised in the carbon plan. No, we don't have a modelling toolkit.
And I've got a very last practical question. In your mobility hubs, can I just check that this is going to be for storage, for not just for electric bikes, but I know we haven't got permissible scooters and things yet, but other forms of powered two-wheelers. So whether that's scooters or motorbikes or any sort of powered two-wheeler, basically, can we have some storage? Because powered skateboard, whatever it is people need for that first and last mile, they need somewhere to store it. So is that what the Mobility Hub Fund is for?
So they're certainly intended to have future micromobility in mind, yes.
Just learnt a new word, micromobility.
Yeah.
It was powered two-wheelers last year.
Yes. No,
this year it's powered, right. Thank you, everybody.
Got more than 2 wheels.
So just to sum up then, we've had details on our 56 contracts and need for information for timetables and passenger charters so we know how to complain. Timetable for franchising, we've talked about the decline of specific services. We've got a review coming up for school buses, and we've endlessly talked about our punctuality issues, real-time information and connectivity, something that's absolutely critical in this jigsaw puzzle. Working with the big organisations such as the NHS, retail, events. Thank you for our input from York. And yeah, really pleased to hear about the safer travel and PCSOs and our journey to net zero. So thank you, everybody. I'd really, really like to just double check that people can make it to the December meeting, because we need to make sure that we've got at least 11 of us in the room for the next meeting. Well, if we make some, we have a mince pie monitor, please. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Have a safe journey home. Thank you. And thank you to anybody who's joined us online. Thank you.